Faceless comedy. Find it by searching.
Good evening and welcome to the first of our news for you since the arrival of Greg Dyke, who has pledged to streamline the BBC by getting rid of redundant grey-suited middlemen. So welcome to my last show. In news this week, at Stormont... Thank you. At Stormont, word arrives that Peter Mandelson has had to pull out of a dinner date. In the core reactor at Sellafield, a youth on work experience discreetly tries to retrieve his car keys. And a fire at the Metropolitan Police laundry has severe ramifications for the Bobby on the beat. On Ian Hislop's team is an actor who drives around London in a taxi, though of course he doesn't stop to pick people up, making it almost impossible to tell them apart from the real thing. Stephen Fry. And with Paul Merton tonight, we were hoping to have with us here in the studio former MI5 spy David Shayler, now exiled in France, but unfortunately the Home Office wouldn't allow him into the country. So instead, would you please welcome live by satellite from Paris, former MI5 spy David Shayler. David joins us from his secret hideaway at number 27 room on March. Incidentally, I should point out, if at any time one of David's answers is found to be in breach of the Official Secrets Act, then sadly I will be in breach of it too for having asked the question, and apparently you will too for having listened to it. So, see you in strange ways. Right, round one is where all the fun evaporates. Paul and David.
Yes, Adolf Hitler.
He's got an MI5 file.
There's Adolf Hitler. There's David Irving, and there
He's got an MI5 file.
Oh. I think you're stuck in a tape loop there. Yeah, I should explain to you. David is at an unfair advantage. He's on a 2-second delay, isn't that right? You're on a 2-second delay, isn't that right? I said you're on a 2-second delay. So it was David Irving was revealed, much to my surprise, as an anti-Semite.
Yes, who'd have thought?
He did rather give the game away in court, though, because at one point he was in the middle of an answer, and instead of addressing the judge as my lord, he called him mein Führer.
And who represented him in court?
He represented himself.
He did?
Yes.
And who prints his books?
He does.
Yep. And who delivers them in a van?
He does.
Yep.
And who reads them? I think he does.
He does.
But who wipes their ass with them? I do. Am I alone in detecting a slight resemblance between David Traitor and...
It's me.
It is, isn't it?
Would you like some water? Yeah. Now, we should have worked that out. You should have had a glass of water.
Yes.
There we are. That's the amazing thing about the channel. Glass turns into plastic. Not now, David, I'm talking. What a booking this has turned out to be. Sorry, David, go on, after you.
Sorry, yes, we're trying to say.
I was just saying, I'm actually in the studio next to Paul. I'm actually in a box.
I wish you were.
Yes, this is historian David Irving, who lost his libel trial at the High Court this week. The trial got off to a bad start for Irving when he entered the witness box and the clerk of the court held out the Bible and said, "Raise your right hand." No, not like that. Ian and Stephen, your bouncer.
Oh, poor Hansi Kronia. Well, it's a sad story, Angus.
Yes.
You probably know all about it, so there's no point me telling you. But
Have you watched this programme before?
oh, yes. Yes, apparently Hansi Kronia, who's the captain of the South African international cricket team, took some money for forecasting match results, and the accusations, I'm afraid, are graver than that, Gussie. They go deeper. It's perfectly possible that he might even be involved in arranging to rig a match and the result of it.
And how did they find this out, Stevie Plops?
Well, didn't they, what's the word, bug his mobile telephone?
Yes.
It's a funny thing about, you know, whenever you talk about sort of liberalisation of drugs or loosening of, you know, sexual laws and things, people say, good old Holland, isn't it, you know, wonderful, tolerant place. How can it be so tolerant? And then you realise, of course, that, you know, 150 years ago, they sent all their maniacs to South Africa. But it's suddenly exploded.
David, you're rather keen on Holland, aren't you? Didn't you choose Holland to go to your first stop when you left our shores?
I did indeed, yes, for the liberalism of Holland.
Do you smoke a lot of cannabis?
A bit.
Yeah.
It slowed down your brain pattern, I know that.
You hear about poor Nasser Hussein was stopped by the police the other day, and they thought he was weaving the car a little oddly, and they asked him to blow into a tube. And he said he had passed over a piece of paper which said, "This man is an asthmatic. Please don't ask him to blow down." It was signed by a doctor. And he said, "Well, in that case, well, I'm afraid I have to take a blood sample." And he passed another one and said, "This man is a haemophiliac. Please don't take any blood out of him." And they said, "Well, in that case, it'll have to be a urine sample." And said, "This man is an England cricketer. Please don't take the piss out of him."
And you heard it here first.
David heard it 2 seconds later.
This is South African cricket This is South African cricket captain Hansie Gronya, who was admitted accepting money from Indian bookmakers and was immediately suspended from the team. A shame, as it now means he misses next week's narrow one-wicket defeat by Australia. So, at the end of that marathon round, each team has reached the dizzy heights of 2. By the media as being interesting and exciting when the dull and turgid reality is more than adequately represented here tonight by our next round. A number of top-secret stories vital to national security for our panellists to divulge as we activate our specially devised espionage-ometer. So, Paul, what's the secret?
I don't know. Do you know, David?
I don't know.
John Prescott.
I do.
Don't ask me what's going on in MI5, I don't know.
You only work there.
He's got John Prescott.
Exactly.
Soon every programme will be made like this. I don't know. Ian knows. Ask him. How's your Buckley card adverts doing?
They're fine, thank you very much. How are your Cutting's Imperial Leather?
Yeah, that was 6 years ago.
Was it?
Yes.
It just feels like
It was good
yesterday.
timing, though, wasn't it, the Barclaycard ads? Just as they closed all those branches, you
Yes.
come on.
You've got to find some way of paying his fee.
Yeah.
Have you got some BMW ads lined up next, have you?
We were in the middle of a topic.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, stop the news, Chris.
Well, we were in the middle of talking about your Barclay card advert, but Ian, I think, knows the answer.
Is there a file on Prescott in MI5?
David, is there a file on
is,
Prescott?
There he says there is, yeah.
There is.
But there are other revelations that you've come out with of people who've got files on them. David, I'm looking at you at the moment.
Yes, well, people like Jack Straw and Peter Mandelson and so on.
He was a member of the Communist Party, wasn't he?
That's right, he's a member of the Communist Party, and they suspected that he'd been placed as a kind of long-term sleeper.
And he denies that he was a member of the Communist Party, but you have evidence otherwise, don't you?
Well, I actually saw a photocopied copy of his membership card.
Right. We can see a photograph of him at the time. Quite clearly a communist, I think.
Is there a file on any of the three of us here? Any of the four of us? I can't count.
Well, I've got one.
Yeah.
Do you think you're being monitored right now by the by MI5?
Well, have they got a telly?
So if we lose you, we'll know what's happened. It is the recent revelations that MI5 holds files on John Prescott and various other members of the cabinet once considered subversive. The accuracy of the MI5 files have been called into question. For example, Jack Straw's dossier begins, "Jack Straw is a hardline revolutionary socialist." Spot on as far as the word is. David, your chance to pitch your wits against our espionage-ometer.
Well, it's clearly Thames House. It's actually the overspend on the MI5 buildings, where MI5 spent 4 times over budget. They managed to let an IRA terrorist slip through vetting. He was actually building within Thames House, and then they had to pull down half the walls and the fittings and so on, just in case he put a bug or a bomb in there.
They are brilliant, aren't they? It does make you sleep safe at night, doesn't it? One of the builders is an IRA, and they recruited you.
Did you sign the Official Secrets Act? It's just a piece of paper to you, isn't it?
That somebody's sweeping up. I signed the same document that people who sweep up in defence contractors sign.
And they at least respect it.
There is a history of wasting money, isn't there?
The best use of money for the Secret Services would be just to close them all down, wouldn't it? Because they've managed
They make
to
a profit, don't they? They sell all kinds of things to other Secret Services. They did quite well last year. They actually made quite a lot of money.
Secrets, you mean?
Secrets. They
Yeah.
sell secrets.
Yeah.
Didn't they, David? Isn't that right? They made quite a lot of money out of it, didn't they?
But if you look at the things they were meant to predict...
Well, they've given quite a few to the Russians recently.
Yeah.
What's the market price for a secret these days?
It's a secret.
Oh,
It's about a Barclaycard
I
ad.
was offered several million quid by the Libyans.
How much?
Several million by the Libyans.
For what?
For details of the Gaddafi plot and Lockerbie and the names of MI5 and MI6 agents in Libya.
And you didn't give it to them?
I didn't, no, because I'm not a traitor.
Good.
Good for you.
this is the recent fiasco over the MI5 building refurbishment. After discovering that one of the labourers was a convicted IRA terrorist, MI5 bosses spent millions tearing the building apart in their search for hidden bombs. Walls were demolished, ceilings pulled down and floorboards ripped up. Surely it would have been cheaper to let the bomb go off. Ian, your official secret?
That's Gaddafi, Colonel Gaddafi, and the plot was that MI5, or was it MI6?
We're going to poison his sunglasses or something, weren't
Yeah, they were trying to kill Gaddafi, but they failed. So another dismal...
Yes, they were funding an assassination attempt.
Rattling tins or whatever, were they?
Yes.
You have to say this is all
Sponsoring.
pure fantasy, of course.
Why is that then?
Because Robin Cook said, I'm perfectly clear that these allegations have no basis in fact. It is pure fantasy. Then 14 months later, a document appeared on the internet saying there was the Gaddafi plot.
But that's the problem politicians have. You bastards never tell them anything. They say, oh, it's not, we're not doing this, we're not doing that. Then they take the flak and have to resign while you lot carry on in your greasy trade.
Stephen, you can't accuse me of not telling anything. They refuse my information, though. Yeah, they want to know what's going on in MI5. I tell them, and they won't accept my information.
How high up the ladder were you in... I mean, how exactly?
I was just below junior management.
Yeah.
So not publicly speaking. You can turn me off, but you can't silence me.
Oh, no. He's ruined it. Dave.
he's back.
Slight technical difficulty over here, David. We lost you for a moment there, not quite sure why. And lastly, Stephen, your Operation Right Answer.
Oh, well, there they are. I think what happens is that these operatives go about with their laptop machines, and they leave them wherever they are, with their password, which is usually password or secret.
MI5.
Or James Bond.
And there was one left in a tapas bar or topless bar or something.
I think it was a tapas.
Tapas bar.
Might be the tapas topless
What's your
bar,
password?
yes.
What password do you use? Or username on the net?
I'm not entirely sure I have a password.
It's money.
Funny, talking of email, there's a rather sweet story. People who work at Disney got this sort of inter-office email memo sent to all of them saying the Disney Corporation is not pleased at any use of the word Mauschwitz to describe this corporation. Anyone who does so in future will be warned once, and then their employment will be terminated. Within about 10 minutes, they were using Dachau, which was rather brilliant. You've got to admire their wit, really, haven't you?
Do you know the tapas bar?
In question?
Robato's. In question, yes.
I think I have been to that one, yes.
When you were in the tapas bars, David, didn't you get up to rather mischievous games at 2 o'clock in the morning, yourself?
Like what?
Phoning up celebrities with your special contacts
This
book.
is a famous story. It was actually, in fact, a Sky News journalist who rang Peter Lilly. Sorry, rang Edwina Curry pretending to be Peter Lilly, using my contacts book. But it wasn't me doing it, it was somebody else using my contacts book.
You're just wild, zany clowns, aren't you? You're a nutty bunch.
You're just crazy guys. You don't care, do you? Yes, so that was...
Oh, poor Paul. Come on, let's get on with it.
Well, it can see you speaking now.
This is, whilst Paul reads the paper, this is the story of an MI6... an MI6 agent who...
David, 4-letter word meaning door fastener. What do you reckon, lock? Got to be,
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
This is the story of an MI6 agent who apparently got drunk, staggered out of a tapas bar at midnight and left their laptop in a taxi. After the laptop went missing, one MI6 source said, "The loss is extremely regrettable. We want the laptop back." Understandable, it's no fun having to play solitaire with real cards. Which naked intelligence signals the end of this bonding process, with Ian and Stephen looking a bit MI4, trailing as they are 7-6. Odd one out never fails to disappoint. Paul, your seats of power belong to Greg Dyke, Prince Charles, Dominic Lawson and Pierre-Yves Gerbeau.
Is this anything to do with people with famous dads? Prince
In
Charles
what
got
way?
famous in what way?
I've got a theory. Can I my theory?
Yeah, go on, you might as well. David, what star sign are you? What star sign?
Capricorn.
Capricorn. You are
Well,
going to
my
have a
theory
very
is that
dull
Mr.
night. People who you respect will start taking the piss out of you. No, sorry, go on. What's your theory?
Well, Mr. Gerbil is in charge of a large tit, and the other three are tits.
You'll do a joke which won't go down very well. Well, all these famous dads, he's all got famous dad. Prince Charles, he's got a famous dad. Prince Philip, Dominic Lawson's got a famous dad. Greg Dyke, Dick Van. Which is not a mobile service in the rural area for homosexuals. I think the odd one out is Prince Charles, because he's the only one drinking a pint of invisible beer.
Is the wrong answer.
Greg Dyke notably caused a bit of an old fuss when he waited so long to get into the dome on Millennium Eve. And as I believe the same thing may have happened to Lawson there, and this chap runs the dome, but I don't think Prince Wales has ever been there because he doesn't approve of the...
But he does complain about it.
He doesn't like it very much, so perhaps he's not been there, so perhaps he would be the odd one out.
Is the right answer.
Is it also true that Greg Dyke is the only one who's a Ferengi from Star Trek?
The answer is yes, that they've all had problems getting into the Millennium Dome, except for Prince Charles, who, according to the Mirror, said that it resembled a cowpat and that he's vowed never to set foot in it. Not as stupid as he looks. David, your pedigree chums are Whiskey and Soda, Ronnie Biggs, Mohammed Al-Fayed and the Queen.
I have to be quite careful on this question because the man in the bottom left-hand corner pays my wages. So we'll move on.
Suddenly, it's got interesting.
What was that?
MI5, we can only assume, interfering with the pictures. I'm sorry about that. Yes, David, you were in the middle of telling us something.
This must be to do with passports. As in, the two mutts will now have passports, so they can come back from Hong Kong. Ronnie Biggs presumably has a passport but can't go anywhere because he's got to stay in Brazil. The Queen doesn't need a passport. Mohammed Al-Fayed hasn't got one.
No.
The dogs do have a passport and everyone else doesn't.
Is the right answer. Very good.
And I have to say that compared to some of the people, the dogs deserve one.
I say, he's a scamp, isn't he?
Is he? A great train robber Ronnie Biggs no longer has a British passport, and he had to flee Britain to live in exile like David Shayler. He's unable to return without facing prosecution like David Shayler, and he's achieved international cult status as a lovable folk hero. Ian, you're... David Putnam, Ruth Rendell, Michael Ashcroft and Posham Becks.
David Putnam is a lord, a Labour lord. Ruth Rendell is a Labour lord. Michael Ashcroft worked very hard for his peerage. Took him most of his life and £3 million, but he got it, quite rightly. Is it to do with thrones?
In what way?
Well, about the only thing I know about these two is that for their wedding they had thrones. It was all in hello. So is it they actually have the thrones, and then... This is a pathetic answer, I can feel it.
And the others?
And the others don't really have thrones anymore because they've abolished the thrones.
One of Ian's better answers, I think. And completely wrong. The answer is that they've all designed their own coat of arms. With the exception of Michael Ashcroft, who is now entitled to one because he's just been made a peer, as you mentioned. But they all have coats of arms, including Posham Becks, of course. But there we are.
Love, friendship.
Sometimes you feel there just isn't enough vomit in the world, do you?
A Labour MP suspicious of Michael Ashcroft's status nicknamed him the Sleaze from Belize. Lucky for him, he has no connection with Sri Lanka. And finally in this round, Stephen, Joan of Arc, Harry Potter, Brian Mawhinney and Jonathan Aitken.
Oh, well, there is...
Voices?
Voices is the one, yes, thing that comes to mind. Voices in head, hearing of. That Joan of Arc notably heard head voices in her. And Harry Potter, the Dark Lord who must not be named.
Voldemort.
He killed Harry's parents, as you probably know.
Yes.
And he hears his voice. Jonathan Aitken heard God talking to him out of a Rolex watch, I believe.
Yeah.
Dr. Mawhinney, he was the chairman of the Conservative Party, wasn't he? And I don't know what his connection...
Interestingly, Brian Mawhinney was told by God to become an MP in 1979, although he obviously didn't hear the word Labour.
Well, in that case, it must be Harry Potter, who doesn't hear the voice of God, but hears the voice of Voldemort.
Is the right answer.
Oh.
Very good. Yes. Revisionist historians now claim that far from being mad, Joan of Arc may have been a victim of food poisoning. Makes sense. I can't tell you the number of times I've eaten a few dodgy prawns and ended up commanding the French army. Which divine comedy means at the end of this godforsaken round, it's Paul and David who look hellbound behind as they are 13-7. And so to our warm and wet final missing words round. A bewildering display of half-cut headlines, including many or fewer from this week's guest publication, the literally fabulous Transgender Community News. Featuring on the cover their cookery expert, Trish the Dish. So, stand by for Super Salmon to what?
Climb Empire State Building.
To smoke themselves and jump onto the bit of brown bread.
Good guess.
Rescue citizens in trouble.
It is, in fact, be first GM fish is the answer. Next, drop it, I'm what?
I'm betting thousands of pounds on us losing this match.
I'm gorgeous.
It's not a cricket reference.
Oh, I see.
Drop it, I'm Rolocop is the answer. This is the Metropolitan
the rollerblading
Police.
policeman.
Exactly. We'll have a look at it. Here we
Go
are.
on, police.
Pretty embarrassing.
And there he is with his hands behind his back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, very
That man's suffering from blur disease. Feel sorry for that. How can you be blurred if you're sitting still? What kind of photograph is that? The only thing that's moving is perfectly pin sharp. I'd get another camera if I was that bloke. Look, the tree's blurred, he's blurred, the grass is blurred. The only thing that's blurred is the bloke that's moving.
That's because he's moving the same speed as the person moving.
Ah, that explains it.
Yeah.
Something like that could confuse a stupid person.
Next, eat your way to what?
Leeds.
Better breasts.
Yeah.
How did you know that? Busty Bliss.
Hey! Wow.
So you were pretending that you'd never heard of Transgender Community News, which that featured in rather largely.
Not your way to better knockers. Chocolate for Charlie's.
Absolutely. Feed yourself with fulsome fun bags.
Yeah.
And finally, what to be used in fight against crime?
Police. It's a new idea. Didn't you think the police did us proud on the Lawrence case? 7 years later, they thought, I wonder if we should dig up the garden of the chief suspect. And they found a knife. And then when the policeman came on, he said, we were acting on a tip-off. They couldn't even claim the credit. Transsexuals to be used.
It's not from Transgender
Super
Community
salmon.
News.
Yeah.
It's not nothing to do
Super
with
salmon!
Yeah. That's what we're doing.
Power of prayer is the
He has to get
answer.
changed in telephone boxes.
What,
Did you
Super
just say
Salmon?
power
salmon?
of prayer?
He did.
Into a what?
What do you mean into a what? Into super salmon? He's an ordinary salmon by day. Then he's on the phone. Super salmon. Do you want spawning, lady? He must know. He must have heard about it. He must have heard about it. Am I the only one that's heard about this?
No, he works for Salmon News during the day. He's got glasses.
That's right, yeah.
Meanwhile,
He
back
works
on
for the
Earth,
Daily Row.
which barking nonsense means at the end of
Have we
tonight's...
won?
I'll let you know in just a second.
All right, I can't wait. You'll find out 2 seconds after me.
Means at the end of tonight's Dog's Dinner, this week's runts of the litter are Paul and David with
Hey!
9, while this week's leaders of the pack are Ian and Stephen with 14. And I leave you with news that the Conservative Party is receiving hundreds of letters a day demanding that Jeffrey Archer should be allowed back in. In Dover, the first dog to forge its own passport approaches customs. And Ken Livingstone gets a shock one morning as he opens the living room curtains. Good night.
Blackadder goes fourth, Blackadder 2, Ab Fab and The Office, 4 of the best British comedy series ever made, and they're all here from 9 in Big Comedy Thursday on UK Gold. Plenty of laughs next tonight with David Baddiel putting his hate into room 101.